Hello. Our lecture for today, chapter 4, the research in the research method, understanding research philosophies and approach. We depends on the book Research Method for Business Students, the 7th edition. We start about understanding the research philosophies and approach. By the end of this chapter, we assume that you'll be able to define the key terms like ontology, epistemology, and explain their relevance to business research. To be able to explain the relevance for business research of philosophical perspectives such as positivism, empiricism, pragmatism, and hermeneutics or interpretivism. To understand the main research paradigm or research program that are significant to business research, to distinguish between different approaches, deductive and deductive, that we mentioned in the previous lectures also. To state your own epistemological and axiological position in your research, to be able to find where is your position in the research. So we start with what's called like the research onion. For sure, we are going to collect data and analyze this data before going to the conclusion or writing our finding. So before starting, let's see where are we here. Which type of philosophy will be positivism or be postmodernism or pragmatism? That's the philosophy. Which approach will we adopt? Deductive, moving from theory and collecting data, or induction or inductive approach that we start from the data to reach the theory or to improve some theory, or something abduction, something between or mix of these approach for the theory developments. And the methodological choice, which will you choose? It will be quantitative data or qualitative data. You will make experiment, survey, case study, a questionnaire, and the time. This is the strategy. What about the time horizon? That you will just make it within a period, short period for the questionnaire, or you cover 2 weeks during your study, or it will do it again and again. It will cover long time, longitudinal research, and the techniques and the procedure for the data collection and analysis of the data. So what's the research philosophy? It's relating to the development of knowledge and the nature of that knowledge. Or in other terms, the term research philosophy refers to a system of beliefs and assumptions. The belief and assumptions about the development of the knowledge. How we develop the knowledge, how the science is proceeding to have a new knowledge, what's good knowledge or useful knowledge and bad knowledge, what's valid knowledge also. Always there is a question, what's the best or the good philosophy for business and management research? That will be determined by the researcher himself according to his own assumption and his own belief. You will find that your beliefs, ethic, value, assumptions that much related to your research philosophies, and it will be reflected on the research design. As we see, developing your research philosophy, a reflexive process that determined by the researcher himself. So, understanding the research philosophy, thinking about which type of the research philosophy that we'll adopt during the research process. Ontology, concerned with the nature of the reality, the question about the assumptions that researchers have, his own value, beliefs, attitude, to be objectivism or subjectivism, objective to deal with facts only, or your own opinion also to be the reflection of your own beliefs and value in the research also. So the first aspect of ontology we discuss is objectivism. The position that social entities exist in reality external to social actors concerned with their existence, something independent from you. Your personal attitude, value, or assumption is not reflective. You are not involved in this object that you are studying. Or to be subjectives, that social phenomena are created from the perceptions, something according to your feelings, to your perceptions about this matter or this subject. So, ontology, the definition, the science or study of being. It claims about what exists, what looks like, what units make it up, and how these units interact with each other. Let's say from physics point of view, these small atoms, these small molecules or whatever, they composed with each other, interact with each other, others in form of substance or molecules, and to form the object, or from biological point of view, to consider as the body of the human being. Ontology describes our view, whether claims or assumption on the nature of the reality, and specifically in this objective reality that really exists. Something really exists, not just subjective in the mind of the author, or subjective reality created in your own minds. Ontology, let's make an example. When we are asking somebody one question, whether it describes what's really going on or what the author think is going on. So when you are describing what's going on, it's to be objective. But if I think that's going on, to be subjective. So which approach that we, subjectivism or objectivism? It exists independently of those who live it, to be objectivism, or just through your experience and perceptions, to be subjectivism. Then we move to the knowledge, the epistemology. It concerns what constitutes acceptable knowledge in the field of study, the valid knowledge, the useful knowledge, closely coupled with ontology, because the ontology is reflecting or leading to the epistemology. View about the most appropriate way of acquiring into the nature of the world. What's considered as knowledge? What are the source of this knowledge? To consider the research method, to discuss how epistemology defines how knowledge can be produced and argued, how the science is proceed, or acquiring or getting new knowledge. The theory or science of the method or ground of knowledge. This is the epistemology according to Baleki. So expanding this into a set of claims and assumptions, attitude and beliefs, how what exists may be known, what can be known, and what the criteria must be satisfied in order to be described as knowledge, because to be systematic, to be logical knowledge, not a fiction. How and what's possible to know, and the need to reflect on the method and the standards to obtain knowledge according to some research method, to some standard, not randomly. So knowing how you can know. This expands this by asking how knowledge is generated, how we have new knowledge, to expand our knowledge, and to be something to be represented or described as a good knowledge. So let's have a quick look on the assumption type, on the ontology, epistemology, and axiology. So what's the nature of the reality? To be objectivism from the real, or to decided by convention. What's the world look like from the ontology point of view? What's like being a manager or being managed? Can you imagine this, how the managers manage their organization? It's according to your perceptions or your observation, your feeling, or something that you can touch and watch in the daily work time. To be epistemology, how can we know what we know? adopt assumption of the natural scientist, or adopt the assumptions of the arts and humanist. And for the axiology, what's the rule of values in the research? Value freedom or value bond that restricted your research. So the aspect of the philosophy, the first one, positivism, the stance of the natural scientist, which is predicted on the idea that social science should use the methods of natural science, unity of science for the scientism. For positivism, science is a study of an objectively existing reality also. And a lot of scholars like Francis Bacon and some Plato, the Cartesian method, the dualism, Herbert Spencer, Auguste Comte, or Emile Durkheim, some scholars that produced a lot of aspects or stances in this positivism point of view. To be realism, direct and critical realism, to be interpretivism, researcher as a social actor, to be hermeneutic, to explain not just the text, what's behind the text, axiology also, studies judgment about values, refers to the rule of values and ethics within the research process. To be positivism, research approach that employ empirical methods, make extensive use of a quantitative analysis, or develop logical to build formal explanatory theory. And the most important for the business research, which I believe from my own point of view, is positivism. Let's say from the ontology that real, external, independent for the researcher, one true reality, universalism, and granular, things ordered. For the epistemology, scientific method, observable, and you can measure these facts from the data that you are collection. It can be generalized also. There is a causal explanation, the type, the nature of the relation between variables. The human research that you are doing, like a human resource management, that application will lead to more organizational outcomes that will give you the direction of the relation, not just the casual relation. And to be value freedom, researcher is independence from what he's researched and maintain objective, not subjective stance, and typically it's deductive and highly structured, large sample when you make sampling and you make the analysis in order to support the theory. Realism, in the other side, another philosophical position relates to scientific inquiry. The essence and the cornerstone of the realism, what the sense show us as reality is the truth, something that you, by your sensation, not by observation, not by the data. Realism is opposed to idealism, the theory that only the mind and its contents exist. And there is two types, to be direct or critical realism. It says that what you see is what you get. What we experience through our sensations, that let us to understand the world accurately. And something, what we see in the world, it's not the real things, it's just the image of the things in the real world, not the things directly. To be critical realist, point out how often our sense deceive us. So you see the outer shell of the object. You are not going inside and to see the black box, how these objects is really work out. To be interpretivism or hermeneutic, it's necessary for the researcher to understand the difference between humans in our role and social actors. This emphasizes the differences between conducting research among people when you go for the organization Are you studying the structure of the organization to be positivism, or you are studying the human relation? You are studying the people as the component of the organization. The researcher is concerned with the meanings that people attach to norms, rules, and value. So we are studying the human being other than studying some physical structure in the organization. Care is taken not to impose a previous understanding of norms, rules, to be subjective, not to be biased, not to make some stereotype or to make some judgment. Pragmatism holds that most important determinant of the epistemology or ontology, axiology adopted in the research question. So just to have a quick look in this box from article in the Journal of the Management, which is a good source for business students, discuss the rationale for undertaking good ethnographic research when investigating the realities of how things works in the organization. So I felt that there was no real alternative to this if I wanted to contribute in a worthwhile way to social scientific understanding of how managers manage. Something that to lead the principles to the action, it's the main concept of pragmatism. Or the research paradigm, as we mentioned, there is positivism, there is empiricism, there is falsification for the Karl Popper, there is the paradigm, there is research program, a lot of philosophies for the research in the social science. One way is the paradigm, that way of improving the theory or creating, generating theories that like matrix 2 by 2 from the radical change, objectives, subjective, and regulation, to study these aspects from different point of view, from which particular understanding of these phenomena can gain and explanation attempt to understand for the organizational analysis. Approach to the theory developments to be deduction, as we mentioned, induction or abduction. The logic, when the premises are true, or induction, that you are not confirmed and tested conclusion, or something to generate testable conclusion. Can be generalized, yes, for deduction, generalization from specific to general, while in deduction, the generalization from general to specific, and generalization from interaction between the specific and general for the abduction, which is something mixed or between both of these. Use of data for deduction. Data is collection is used to evaluate proposition or hypothesis related to an existing theory. So we start from the theory, while here we now need to build theory or conceptual framework, and something that oscillating, that not obeying or applying the definite rules, move from abduction and from induction and to deduction, theory falsification or verification, theory generation, and building also for the purpose of the induction. This is what we discussed, the three approaches: induction, deduction, and abduction. For deduction, there is 5 sequential stage of testing the theory, that as we proposed some hypotheses and looking for some scales and measures to operationalize these hypotheses, to test the hypothesis and examining the specific outcomes of the inquiry by analyzing our data, and then if we got some logical finding, we accept the theory, otherwise we reject the theory and we look for another theory. Deduction also put forward a tentative idea, premise, hypothesis, using existing literature, examine premise and logic argument, test the premise by collecting appropriate data, enough sampling, analysis, and then from the conclusion that the theory is accepted or not accepted. So the characteristics or the features of deduction that we explain use a causal relationship between the two variables, the cause and effects, the nature of the relationship, and the direction of the relationship between these variables, controls for testing hypotheses. There is some control variables, some situation that to be taken in the consideration while conducting the study, and independence of the researcher as a positivism, maybe concepts operationalized for quantitative measurements, while in the inductives or induction it will be qualitative measurements. Sometimes you maybe use both, and to be able to generalize the theory. The induction, it's the building the theory, understanding the way human build their world, explanation of what's going on, being concerned with the context of the events, using more qualitative data, while deduction use more quantitative data or data analysis, using a variety of data collection methods. Also, the right choice of approach help you to make more informed decision about your research design, which approach, which strategy, as we mentioned on the onion. Think about which strategies will work for your research topic, adapt your design to create for another constraints and the others to be reliable that can rely on. Things worth considering also, the nature of the research topic, what's the main concepts and the field that you want to research about, the time available for you to collect the information, to review the literature, to have your data, to analyze your data, to be able to write your final work, the extent of risk. Sometimes maybe you are not able to reach your goals, or your finding is not much matching your aims and objective of the research audience, managers, or decision makers, or the supervisor of your course. And maybe just to have a quick look on the major differences between the two main approaches, deduction and induction. These scientific principles moving from theory to data, while the induction is moving from data to theory and aim to build a theory. The deduction explain causal relationship between variables, collection of quantitative, while it's collect qualitative, mostly qualitative data, and to select sample for your research, less concerned with the need to generalize, while this one the deduction need to be generalized. In summary, the research philosophy, which is most important, something that the doctrine, the modus operandi for your research project, to relates to the development of knowledge and the nature of that knowledge, what's the aim of your research topic, and why you are choose this kind of philosophy. May you mention that to enhance our understanding, to gain more knowledge, to fill the gaps according to the epistemology point of view, or something like this, contains important assumptions about the way in which you view the world from different perceptions, enhance our way of thinking, our way of understanding the business issue. And we mentioned the three major ways of thinking about research philosophy, even they are related to each other in sequences, to be ontology, then epistemology, and axiology. And the four the paradigms are to be functionalist, as to adopt the way that from biological point of view, how the system and subsystem of the human being's body that work and interact with each other, to be radical humanist, to be interpretive or hermeneutic, to be radical structuralist also, or modernist. And the most important, to keep in mind also that difference between deduction and induction, that which start